And I want you to know that I thought my wife would be teaching junior church today, and she's in here, so I can't talk about her the way I intended to. So I have to modify the sermon illustrations a little bit. But been a lot of curiosity about my table full of boxes. And I wanted to try to illustrate the sermon this morning, and you'll see how it fits in here in a little bit. But a lot of people have had curiosity about it. I think Don was tempted to take it to help him move as packing boxes. I wanted to have cardboard boxes so we could knock them around a little bit, That's how I keep some of you people awake, But I found out that became, on a small table, just impossible to do. And so we went with these. But we'll explain a little bit about how they all fit into the sermon this morning. I want to talk to you about order. And I'm probably the last person in the world that should be speaking about ordering something, because my wife would tell you that for 50 years she's been trying to get me to get more ordered in my life. And actually going on 52 now. And to a certain extent she has succeeded, and to a certain extent she has failed, because I'm just not naturally an orderly person. But as I get older, I'm beginning to see more value in order. First of all, it's hard to get out of a chair, so if things are in order, I don't have to get up from my easy chair as often. So that's one good thing. And I'm not real thrilled about climbing steps anymore, so when things are where they ought to be and are put back where they go, I don't have to make as many trips up and down the stairs to the basement to get what I didn't put back where I had gotten it. So I've become more of a fan of order. And one of the things she's tried to do in the 52 years is to convince me that my closet could use some order. I was a fella that thought that I could put all my ties in a nice big spider web nest, in a dresser drawer, and they wouldn't look wrinkled when I tried to undo them. It's kind of like if you've ever twisted up an electric line or perhaps a rope, sometimes, you almost can't get them out. You just about have to cut it to get things to undo. Well, the same thing was true with my ties at times. And so she finally convinced me I ought to put up a few tie racks, because they do much better if you can hang them individually, and then some of the wrinkles I get in over my big tummy, that way when I'm wearing them kind of fall out. So she succeeded in that. But in 50 years, she hadn't talked me into organizing my closet. Now, for you ladies that cook and have a kitchen, you already know what order's all about. You know exactly what cupboard to go into to get your measuring cup. You know exactly where you keep your silverware. You know you could do it with a blindfold on. Well, you can bring those same skills into the Christian life and make your Christian life as easy sometimes as cooking. The one complication you have is if there's not enough room in your kitchen for all of your kitchen utensils. Every year they come out. One year I remember buying my wife a salad shooter. We still don't know where that went. It went into a drawer and we never saw the light of day again. But every year they come out with something else you need in order to properly cook food. And our countertops aren't big enough to hold all those doodads. And our drawers probably aren't either for a lot of the things they try to convince us we need. But today's sermon is about order, and if you're like me, that doesn't come naturally for you. But in most of our 50 years, or in a lot of it, we lived in apartments where the closets were 2 feet long, weren't even adequate for half of the stuff that we had. And so I vowed that if we ever build a house, I was going to have walk-in closets in the house. So I accomplished that, but I created another problem. I just threw all my stuff in there, hung it up wherever I wanted, And so then I discovered I could take hours hunting for the pair of pants that I wanted or for a shirt that I wanted because there was more places for them to hide with more room. But I finally, because I think we all try to compensate for the out of control sense that we have with the pandemic going on and so forth. And so I finally decided that I was going to order my closet. And I found out that this ordering thing just creates more questions. I had decided, okay, honey, you're right. I need to bring some order out of it. And then was, how do I want to order it? Where do I want my pants to go? Where do I want my suits to go? Where do I want my work clothes to go? And so I had to answer those questions as well. But there was another thing I discovered is I had within myself to explain why I wanted to spend a whole afternoon doing that. The why question. Why do I want to be doing this? It's pretty cool because I know where to go into my closet and I can walk right to my work clothes. I can walk right to my suits. I can walk right to my short sleeve shirts, and I can walk right to my long sleeve shirts. So I don't spend hours and hours hunting for the outfit I want to wear anymore. And so there is some advantages to ordering. But the thing about ordering is I can stand up here and spend the next 25 minutes talking about it. You've got to decide why you need it in your life. We're going to try to give you some reasons for that, but it's important for us to see that it's a personal decision. I could probably hold a gun to your head and make you put some order into your life, but I spent most of last night not feeling the best, and so I didn't get much sleep last night, and I don't want to stay up that long tonight to hold a gun to your head to try and get you to order your life. But I'm finding out it's a pretty cool thing to order your life. I want to explain what our table full of boxes are here. And so, Tom, I know you've got to try to follow me with the camera, but so I'll try not to move too fast. But I would like for you to use your sanctified imaginators today and see this table as your life, your daily life, or your 24-hour life, or however it works, to see it as this table. Now, the first thing that we see about this table is all these boxes can't equally fit on this table. I tried. You can't put all those boxes evenly. And as Christians, we know that's true because as Christians, I think this symbolizes our life. One of these boxes, and we're going to call these boxes today life boxes. And so this top third box is the God box. It's the God things box. It has things in here like personal Bible study and prayer and worship. Maybe some attendance along the way at the Lord's church as well, but instead of calling it the church box, I like the title, the God's box. As a Christian, the Bible teaches that the second God box that you try to evenly order your daily life is your family box. Now, depending upon whether or not you have children or grandchildren or whether or not you're newly married, there's some aspects of the marriage box that it has in it. First of all, there's a marriage. My wife grew up in a home where she had no brothers. And guess what? I grew up in a home where I had no sisters. I tell you what, the marriage part of ordering our life, when it came to marriage, we had a lot of ordering to do. I'd never lived with a woman before. She'd never lived with a man before. And so the family box has that in it. And then you throw kids into the mix, and then they become teenagers. And then maybe if God blesses you have grandchildren, and believe me, that box keeps wanting to grow and grow and grow and grow as we try to order our lives. And then Perhaps the third box we'll call the job. And jobs can be more demanding, some less demanding, and they kind of change as the years go on. And maybe a job that we were thrilled about initially, we're not so thrilled about anymore. So why do we keep going? Why do we get up at the same time every morning so we can get there in time to punch in or report to work on time, even if we don't like it? Well, part of it is that decision that we've got to make, the why. Why do you do that every day? Why do you do that? You do it because you love your family. You want your wife and your children, or your husband and your children, to be able to continue to eat. And so these little life boxes are very complicated things. And some of them are huge. Job is bigger, perhaps, than others. And unfortunately, for the Christian, we sometimes let that job life box get way out of size, oversized. Job takes over our life. And as a result, these boxes have to get smaller because there's only so big a table. There's only so much room in our life. And for the Christian, we have an additional challenge. If we accept Jesus Christ, you know, the person who doesn't know the Lord only has two boxes up here. He has job, or they have job and family. But if you're a Christian, you've got the job box as well. And so God instructs us in His Word that we've got to get some order. We've got to do some prioritizing. We've got to figure out how to make all this work in a 24-hour day. And sometimes it's not easy. And I want to share with you some of the things that we can get or we can learn from these job boxes or these life boxes and this table of our life. The first thing is not everything will fit. I'd like to share with you the title I have for some of these little boxes. How about hobbies? Know anybody whose hobby has taken over their life and has hurt their family and hurt their relationship with the Lord? I know some of those folks. In hobbies, let's throw in there maybe sports addiction or sports participation. I've got a neighbor down beside me in Florida, and he's 69 years old, and he still plays in the senior league softball. He's messed up both knees, he's broken his hip, and his fingers are all smashed where he's played sports through the years, and he still gets up at 5 o'clock every morning to go play softball. You know, we can let our hobbies take over our life. Or maybe one of those boxes is financial. I don't know, maybe you are the fortunate person that has more money than you know how to spend. And so your box is probably oversized because you spend a lot of time worrying about that money and how to use it. But a financial box, we all have one, even if we don't have enough to pay all our bills. It's one of the things that takes up our time on a daily basis. How about medical? Just filling out all the government forms anymore for medical takes up a lot, aside from the other medical responsibilities that we have. I thought once I retired and got Medicare, I'd be all set and it'd be simple. Not so, folks. That box is not a small box either. We've talked about job and family. How about social media? I know I quit preaching just then and went to meddling, but how much of our 24-hour day do we spend on our devices? And a lot of times, just because we're looking at cats or other things that are cute, but they're taking time away from the other boxes when we get addicted to social media. Relaxation. I think everybody deserves a vacation every year, but some people think they deserve a vacation every weekend. Relaxation. Do you know anybody that has let their relaxation expectations interfere with their family box or their God box? Some people even let it interfere with their job box. Prayer. What a great privilege we have to talk to the Almighty, and yet I would say if we were going by size, for most of us, even God's people, the prayer box is not near as big as it ought to be. How about home maintenance? I've got 4 acres every week to keep mowed. Any of you that love to mow grass, come on out. I'll put you on a lawnmower and I'll sit there and drink tea while I watch you mow my lawn. But just home maintenance. I don't know about you, but about every 20 years, it seems like I'm rebuilding my house. I didn't think I'd have to do that ever. Doors wear out, gutters begin to leak, roofs need replaced. It's never ending. And so just home maintenance is another big box. And the older house that you live in, probably the bigger your box is. And so what I'm saying to you is, there's a lot to fit in your life, on your life table. And it doesn't all fit flat on the top, which means you have to prioritize and say, which one of these things are most important to me? We're going to talk to you about a filter here in a second, about how we go about deciding what's on top priority, what's in the middle, and what's down at the bottom. But that's what we mean by ordering. In a pandemic world, we think that if we can just get that table set up right, we'll gain some control. But the problem with these boxes is they don't stay where you put them. Every day, it seems like a different box comes to the top and demands more of your time than you have to give. Maybe it's illness. Maybe it's, and heaven forbid, a death in the family. There are bankruptcy that you hadn't anticipated, or you go into work and they say, you know what? We don't need you anymore. And job loss. And I didn't even make boxes for those. Those boxes that are on that table are just some of the ones I mentioned before, all the good things. But we all know that life is uncertain, and those boxes immediately go to the top of the heap and say, I need all your time, I need all your attention, and it's pretty hard to keep a balance, keep things ordered when that happens. So they move around all the time. It's like we'd almost have to nail them down. But in real life, we can't nail them down. That's one of the things that I wanted to do with the cardboard boxes. I was going to ask some of you to throw some of them at me, and I was going to try to knock them away and let you succeed in burying me in them, because that's how life feels sometimes. Just when we get things in order, if these were cardboard boxes, I could kick them and make a mess out of them and say, there, now, your first order of business tomorrow is to order your life again, to decide what's important, what goes on top. In a pandemic world where everything seems out of control, I thought we had this pandemic beaten at least 2 or 3 times, and here we're starting into another wave. And this particular variant is a little more contagious than some of the other ones we've dealt with. It just seems like this thing will not go away. And in a world where gas may cost $6 a gallon by July, and some say $8 a gallon by August, how do you order your world in a world that seems to be out of control? Well, the scripture has some suggestions, and we're going to look at those. If you want to turn over to Luke chapter 10, here were 2 gals that had it together. The Bible teaches that hospitality is one of the things God wants in people. So that would be a whole new box. Not only do I have to order my world, I've got to make plans to fit into somebody else's ordered world so that I can practice hospitality and invite them over for a barbecue. This thing's getting more complicated as we go along. So, hospitality. Mary and Martha were two gals. They had a brother named Lazarus that Jesus liked to stay at their place, and they were very hospitable. And so in Luke chapter 10, verses 38 through 42, we're going to read what happened with them. As Jesus and his disciples were on their way, he came to a village where a woman named Martha opened her home to him. We assume that Mary was in agreement with that, but you got to remember, at minimum, she was inviting 13 people into her house. Think about that, Jesus and 12 disciples. And probably they had a few other folks that traveled with them most of the time, so it could have been as many as 20 people that you suddenly decide to invite for supper. So they had it right. In that sense, they had ordered their world properly, but then something happened. And so let's go on and see what happened. As Jesus and his disciples were on their way, he came to a village where a woman named Martha opened her home to him. She had a sister called Mary who sat at the Lord's feet listening to what he said, but Martha was distracted by all the preparations that had to be made, and she came to Jesus and said, "Lord, don't you care that my sister has left me to do the work by myself? Tell her to help me." We would expect Jesus to say, "You're right, Martha. Mary, go help your sister." But that's not what Jesus said. He said, "Martha, Martha." Whenever somebody uses your name twice, you know you're going to hear something that you don't like. Every time I heard Charles Eldon, I knew that I was going to hear something from my mom that I didn't want to hear. "Martha, Martha," the Lord answered, "you are worried and upset about many things, but few things are needed." There are probably 17 boxes on that table. That's not a few things that we try to deal with every day. And yet Jesus says in his teaching that there's only a few things that are really important if we want to order our world. He says, "Martha, Martha," the Lord answered, "you are worried and upset about many things." You identify with that? I can. We were just talking about this in the men's meeting on Wednesday night here a couple weeks ago. It's not an easy world to order. There's a lot of things. There's a lot of decisions. Sometimes we get upset and worried about those things. And then he goes on to say something even more amazing. He said, "But there is only one thing needful." One thing. Man, I could handle one thing. If I only had to find a place for one of those life boxes on that whole life table, I could put it wherever I wanted. It'd be simple. Life would be simple. That's what Jesus says, so we got to identify what that one thing that's that important. You see, I wasn't going to reorganize my closet until I knew why I was doing it. And as much as I love my wife, it wasn't because she had chewed my ear about it for 50 years. I had to decide that I wanted it organized. And there's one thing needful in your life. You got to decide. You got to make a decision about that one thing needful. And listen to what Jesus has to say. He tells us what that one thing is. "Mary has chosen what is better, and it will not be taken away from her." What's the one thing that we need to identify to be able to even begin to handle organizing our life? We got to make a decision about Jesus. What he's really saying here is, I'm that one thing. There's only a few things needed, but I'm the one thing you got to decide. My closet would still be a mess if I hadn't decided I was going to do something about it. And your life, if you're outside of Jesus Christ, is never going to have the order to it. It's going to be out of control. Those things are going to be banging around, bumping into each other. You're never going to feel like you're in charge of your life until you make a decision about Jesus Christ. Because that's the one thing. Other translations call this the better part. And he identifies for us here in verse 42 how we identify what the better part is. He says, it will never be taken away from you. So if we want to make our life simple, we need to really spend some time inwardly organizing the inside first to realize that Jesus is that better part, because he'll never be taken away from us. We can move away from him, but he'll never move away from us. And when you get that right and you know the why, then you know why you get up in the morning and go to work, even if you're not a real big fan of your job at the moment. You also know why you sacrifice for your family, because Jesus tells us to do it. It's Jesus first and Jesus alone. When you get that right inside, it gets easier. I didn't say it was easy. It gets easier to deal with all those boxes of your life every day. Because all of those are good things. I didn't name one thing that wasn't a good thing. Now, I did mention illness. I did mention job losses are not good things. I did mention perhaps caretaking of a loved one. All those things can have a real impact on ordering your life. But once you have Jesus inside, you can handle it. You can find a way to bring order out of the most unordered life. How do I know what the good portion is that Jesus praised Mary for choosing? It was the only thing in that whole house that couldn't be taken away. I'm sure Martha had prepared a great meal for Jesus and her disciples and his disciples, but that could be taken away. None of us know if the shelves in the supermarket are going to continue to be stocked, whether or not we'll, for the first time in most of our lives, know what it is to not have enough to eat. We don't know about that. We don't know what the future's going to hold, but we know we can handle it, because that's not the thing that can't be taken away. Jesus is. And because you have Jesus, you can face it. We wouldn't be the first of God's people that have suffered famine. We wouldn't be the first of God's people that had some real tough times. But with Jesus in our life, we can face it. And our private world, where we have to make that decision, is the only world that we can truly organize. That's pretty simple. Jesus says, just choose the right thing one time and then never back up from that decision. And internally, you'll have order. I can deal a little bit with the craziness of our schedules and my schedule, as long as I know that that one thing that'll never be taken away from me is still there. I can handle that one thing. We don't spend a whole lot of time, unfortunately, making sure that the one thing is the main thing in our life. We can all do better at that. So our private world's the only one we can successfully order. I think this is what Jesus meant in Matthew 6:33 when he says, "Seek ye first the kingdom, and all these other things, all those other life boxes that we worry about. Will we have enough to eat? And will the family be okay?" And certainly after the shooting in the grade school this week, we wonder. I mean, my grandkids go to a public grade school, and hit me as a grandparent very hard. But you see, all those things we worry about, Jesus says, will be given unto you. He says, seek ye first the kingdom and his righteousness, and all these other things, all these other life boxes will be taken care of. Now, the only thing I can say to you is, if you're sitting there and saying, I don't know about that, preacher. Well, if you've never tried it, don't knock it. Try it. I think Jesus would say, take me at my word and see if it doesn't work. So if you're here outside of Jesus Christ, you've got a decision to make. I decided I wanted a closet where I could walk in and pick out in just a minute or so whatever I wanted to wear for the day. And it took most of an afternoon. But once I made that decision, I still have it that way. A year later, I can still do that. It's the first time in my life that I've been able to do that in my closet. You don't think your life can begin to have some order to it because you just got too many, you're trying to, juggle too many life boxes. Make a decision about Jesus Christ and then test Him and see if it doesn't work. Hospitality is taught by God. In fact, it's one of the qualifications we're told to look for in our elders. You can't be qualified to be an elder if you're not a hospitable person. 1 Timothy 3, and I think chapter 3 and verse 2 says that. Hospitable. It's kind of a lost art in our day and age, but it's still practiced in the Middle East where Jesus taught. And yet, look what Jesus did in this instance. He said, even if it's a good thing, which hospitality was, in fact, God, the Father, had ordered it, had commanded it, His people to be hospitable. And yet Jesus said, even a good thing is not the best thing. Even a good thing can be disregarded if you're seeking that one thing, a relationship with Jesus Christ. And if you don't have that, then to be hospitable doesn't really count. The Old Testament puts it this way: God desires mercy more than He does sacrifice. Now, God ordered sacrifice in the Old Testament, but God said, I value mercy more important than sacrifice. Isn't it helpful to be able to look at all these decisions and priorities in our life and to be able to look at it from God's point of view, from Jesus' point of view? None of us would have expected Him to say what He did. But He pointed out that there's really only one decision to be made in life if you want your life to make more sense and have more order. And that's what you're going to do with Jesus. You're going to have to decide how to arrange the life boxes in your life. But Jesus says there's only one place for me, and that's on top. I'm the number one priority. And when you get that straight, all the other decisions you don't make alone, because you make it with His Holy Spirit that's promised to you when you become a Christian, and you make it from God's perspective. It's like we put on different glasses and we look at things through God's point of view. And so maybe we take some of those good things and we start not eliminating them from our lives totally, but maybe cutting them back. Maybe we don't need to spend 3 hours a day on our cell phone. Maybe we don't need to go to 4 ball games every weekend between our kids and other games that we might go to. We begin to pare back some of the good things, the good life boxes, in order to have room to be the person God wants us to be. Because if you're so busy, I found out that the doctors have now come out and diagnosed a busyness illness. They actually have it in the medical books, that we are just so busy running around that it's actually has physical effects. And so it's important for us to see that there's really only one decision. I decided I wanted an organized closet, and I have it. You can decide that you want Jesus to be the Lord of your life, and you'll have order in your life, and you'll see things differently, even the good things. Too much time spent in them can become bad things. And Jesus will help you with that and to make those decisions. Then I wanted to close this sermon this morning to say that when you get Jesus in your life, He will show you how to limit your choices, to limit what you're involved in. I think it's ironic, but there were times when Jesus had healed people all day, and He got up early the next morning, and you think, good, He's going to have another day of healing, and instead He goes off to pray, and then He just walks away. All those people waiting to be healed. And Jesus walks away from them. Why? Because his point of view was that he had a whole country to get to. He had other people to preach the gospel to, and he had to say no to some people's genuine needs because there were other folks that had needs and deserved to see the Savior. In my life, I will share this testimony with you. The Christian life has always been difficult. It's always been painful for me because I had to say no to too many things I'd have liked to have done. Believe it or not, I'd like to own an airplane. I've always loved to see what it looks like from up there in the clouds. I'd like to own an airplane, but if I owned an airplane, I couldn't support the Lord's work the way that the Lord has blessed us to be able to do. There's a lot of expense that goes into owning an airplane and also a lot of time that goes in. So as much as I would love to fly, I'm not going to be buying an airplane. That's not going to be one of my life boxes that clutter up my life. I love sports. Eric does too, but I'm not going to get so involved in that I pick that over worship. I just won't do that. You see, because I have a different set of glasses on now. I see things from a different perspective now that I've been a Christian. Does that mean those decisions aren't painful? Absolutely not. We as Christian people have to say no to more good things than those that are not Christian. Now that may shock you as a statement because we have another box on top. And if you're a caregiver, you will have to say no to more good things because of something more important a more important box. And if an illness comes along to challenge you, again, it will be painful to make those limitations on how big you allow those boxes to grow in your life, those life boxes to get. It's not easy. The Christian life is not easy, and Jesus never promised that it would be easy to make those decisions to order our life. But he says he'll help us. There's only one thing that's needful, he said, only one thing that's noble. And that's a decision about what you're going to do with me. And because of that, he told Martha, Mary made the right decision. Not because the Bible doesn't teach hospitality, but because she's made the better decision and she limited her choices on the good things. I'm glad I ordered my closet. I've never regretted since I've been 12 years old ordering my internal private life by choosing Jesus Christ. And I continue to struggle to keep those silly boxes in the order and priority that I want them to be because I now see things from Jesus' point of view. Maybe you need some order in your life. If you do, we'd love to talk to you about what Jesus is going to do when it comes to ordering your private world. Thank you for your kind attention today. I'm going to sing a closing song.
Can you guys stand with us?